enjoy English school. I am Chris Gorski.
I'm Antony.
Today is day 2 of our 2-day culture article. And this month, we're talking about the Ainu, the indigenous people of Hokkaido.
Yeah, 我们继续介绍昨天我们介绍过的爱奴族。我们昨天简单的介绍一下爱奴族，他们本身是在北海道。那当初的时候呢，慢慢，后来这个日本他们开始占领了这个札幌之后，开始他们的这个文化就渐渐的融合了。那我们今天要继续介绍跟历史有关的故事。
Okay, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to hear our story, and we're going to begin paragraph 1.
The Ainu, the indigenous people of Hokkaido. The history of Japanese and Ainu relations is a sad story. In the 1600s and 1700s, the Ainu regularly traded with the Japanese. However, the relationship changed under the Tokugawa shogunate, which was the military government that was established by Tokugawa Ieyasu. After most of Japan's other islands were brought under the shogun's control, the government turned its attention to Hokkaido. At that time, most Ainu were forced into labor to serve the Japanese. As a result, large numbers of Ainu people were separated from their families and villages. As Japanese became the dominant culture on Hokkaido, the Ainu language started to disappear. Today, there are only around 100 native Ainu speakers left. It was only in 2019 that the Japanese government formally recognized the Ainu people as an indigenous group. This will provide them with legal protections for their culture, language, and traditions. Hopefully, this culture can be saved for future generations.
Okay, friends, before we begin paragraph 1, I remember, so we know my name is Chris Gorski. 那个 SKI 的这位, that's a really good hint that my family is from Poland or maybe Russia. My family specifically is from Poland, and I showed my wife when we were in America some traditional Polish kind of art, and she says, it's so funny, this looks just like indigenous art from Taiwan.
Oh.
Now, I knew a little bit about indigenous Taiwanese art, but we also looked more at Taiwanese indigenous art, and it really did have a lot of similarities. Very traditional Polish art and indigenous Taiwanese art, and also several other traditional indigenous cultures have a lot of similar characteristics, if you ask me. I thought that was really interesting to compare these from all over the world.
没错，老师呢就提到说，你从他的姓氏 Chris Gorski 那个 ski 的地方，你可以听得出来，他是跟这个波兰啦，或是那种俄罗斯啊、斯拉夫语系有关的这个家庭嘛。那这个事实上，他之前有去看过这个跟波兰有关的一些原住民文化。那老师本身对台湾的原住民文化也有所了解，就居然意外的发现说，很多原住民文化之间它有许多共同的特色，这不是非常非常好玩的事情吗？
That's right. Now, I'm not saying all indigenous people are the same. I'm not saying that. But I do think there's a lot of similarities, and it kind of makes sense, right? This is from a long time ago, so there's only some technology, and that traditional art was made using that limited older technology, and so it would produce similar things, right? And then they're probably using natural colors only in nature, so it would produce lots of similar kind of colors and things found throughout. I thought that was really interesting, and I wonder if you feel the same way. When you hear the word indigenous or when you hear the word native, what are some of the ideas you think about? And that's what I think about when I hear that indigenous. I think about the art. I think about the culture and the families of a lot of indigenous people. What do you think tell us in those comments.
没错。如果说今天你听到 indigenous 或是 native 这样子的原住民的话，原住民文化，你会想到什么东西？什么东西会浮现你的脑海？老师刚刚就分享了他所听到这个词的时候，脑中出现的一些东西。我的话，我想到的是达悟族，他们那种黑色跟红色相间的，然后还有种太阳形状的，有一些非常非常特殊的那种图腾像的文化。那如果是你的话，你会想到什么？记得要留言给我们哦，我们在 YouTube 频道上面都有，我们都会看你的留言哦。
English or Chinese are great. Let's get into our story. The history of Japanese and Ainu relations is a sad story.
好，我们来看第一段的第一句话哦。看到第一句话，他说 The history of Japanese and Ainu relations is a sad story. 好，这个 relation 是外交关系的时候会用到的。它在日本和爱奴族之间的这种关系，外交关系呢，其实讲起来，哎呀，这个历史就感伤啦。
Honestly, this is a very common story in history. You have a bigger, more powerful group, and then you have a smaller group, and that smaller group gets pushed away, and then usually even more trouble. This is a very common story in history, sadly. In the 1600s and 1700s, the Ainu regularly traded with the Japanese.
好，现在告诉你说，在1600和1700年代呢，The Ainu regularly traded with the Japanese. 它爱奴族呢跟日本呢是有持续的这种贸易关系的。Regularly 就是指定期的、规律的、固定的这样的感觉。Traded with, trade with somebody 意思就是指这种贸易、交易的意思。
Now this is very traditional, traded with. If we want to speak about modern times, 现代的, we can underline this. We'll say do business. 还是跳过去是 the Ainu regularly did business with the Japanese. 但是 when we say do business, it feels very modern. And of course, we're talking about 400 years ago.
Yeah.
So be careful what time you're using. Let's continue. However, the relationship changed under the Tokugawa shogunate, which was the military government that was established by Tokugawa Ieyasu.
好，我们来看一下下一句话，他就说了 However, the relationship changed. 好，所以他们之间的关系改变了。改变的原因是什么呢？如果各位知道熟悉日本史的话，一定会听过一个人名，就是 Tokugawa Ieyasu， 好，就是德川家康。所以在这里面你所看到的 Under the Tokugawa shogunate， 好，就是指德川幕府。然后后面要告诉你这个 shogunate 到底是什么？逗号。Which was the military government that was established by Tokugawa Ieyasu? 它是德川家康所建立起来的军政府，叫做 Tokugawa shogunate， 好，就是德川幕府。
Yeah, now a shogun is just the leader of this Japanese military government. And this was established in 1603. So 1603, 1603, 不是03. And this is about like the start of Qingqiao的时候. So it kind of help you think about when this is. Okay, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we have paragraph 2. Okay, friends, it's Enjoy English School. We're on day 2 of our story about the Ainu, the indigenous people of Hokkaido, and we're on pages 36 and 37. Let's begin. After most of Japan's other islands were brought under the shogun's control, the government turned its attention to Hokkaido.
好，再来我们看第二段咯。好，我们刚刚提到了德川家康跟德川幕府嘛，对不对？那一旦今天他想要慢慢统治全日本的时候，接下来事情就会发生了。你看 After most of Japan's other islands were brought under the shogun's control， 这个 shogun 的话就是指这个德川家康哦。那在许许多多日本其他岛屿慢慢的被收罗到了这个德川幕府的麾下之后，就被他们控制了之后呢 ，the government turned its attention to Hokkaido。所以说到后来这个军政府就剑指北海道，好，就决定说，好，我把我的注意力放在北海道，下一步我们就是要去可能统治他们这样子。
Let's take out our pen. Let's underline turn its attention to. When you turn your attention to somebody or to something, that means you want to focus on something. So F-O-C-U-S, on. Turn your attention to something or to focus on something.
没错，你也可以使用 focus on something 来表达说我开始聚焦在什么事情上面，所以他们现在的目标就放在北海道，下一步就是要统治他们。
At that time, most Ainu were forced into labor to serve the Japanese.
好，当时呢 at that time, most Ainu were forced into labor. 哇，这个听起来就好惨哦，许许多多的爱奴族呢被迫 were forced into labor 就被迫劳动，好，去劳动什么呢 ？To serve the Japanese 去服侍这些日本人。
Now, yesterday we talked about all of the passive voice in our article, 被动语态, and here's another good one. Were forced into. Who forced the Ainu into labor? Well, the Japanese, but we don't know that person's name. We don't know the name of the man that made them do hard work. So we're going to use the passive voice. Were forced into. Please highlight it. Passive voice is very useful grammar. When we say labor, it usually feels like hard work. Not always. Like teaching is technically labor, but it's teaching.
Labor of love, right?
It's a labor of love. It's hard work. It's something you do, but it's not the same as carrying big rocks.
啊，不一样嘛，对不对？又不是搬大石头。教书的话也是一种劳动，但是我们常常讲说是自己非常喜爱的一件事，我们可以说 labor of love 来表达这样的概念。所以 labor 这个字多半跟身体的劳动活有关，但不一定是绝对这样的。在这个地方的话，感觉上应该是让他们做劳役这样的感觉。
Let's continue. As a result, or so, large numbers of Ainu people were separated from their families and villages.
好，所以你看这个地方又看到被动语态了，对不对？这句话他讲说 as a result， 意思就是结果呢，所以因此 large numbers of Ainu people， 许许多多的爱奴族呢，就被迫怎么样 ？were separated from their families and villages， 就被迫跟他们的家人啦，还有跟他们的他们住的这个村庄啦，永远的隔开了。
Well, we have real upbeat stories today.
Oh no.
So, we're separated is another passive voice. Let's highlight this. I always feel bad, like, when we have these sad stories because I'm like a usually upbeat person and I'm like, hey, everyone, listen to English school. Let's talk about hard labor.
On a sad note, right?
I'm never quite sure how I should be teaching this.
I know. 老师他是非常有活力的人，所以每次提到这种有点悲伤，甚至有点残酷的这种故事的时候，老师都有点想说，我要怎么样调整一下，不要听起来太欢乐、太嗨，因为老师本身就是一个很开心的人。
对，不适合 ，It's not appropriate.
Right.
It's the book club. 这个作者他的家长他们自杀了。I always feel bad when we have these sad topics, like, as I want to be really fun, but I really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Now, let's look at our sentence here. As a result, large numbers of. Large is a great word. Everybody knows big, B-I-G. Yeah, okay. But that's kind of a like gaga goo goo English, isn't it? It's baby English. So don't say big, say large. But sometimes big, but big sometimes feels not appropriate here. When we're talking about large numbers of Ainu people, it's actually not really good English to say, as a result, big numbers of Ainu people. Big here is not a good word choice. So usually when you can say big, just say large.
没错，所以说 large 的话用的词汇量比较广泛哦，可以在很多不同的语境下使用。所以你要表达大量的那种大的概念的时候，用 large 最安全咯。
Okay, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we got more upbeat positive news for you to study. All right, friends, we're back with more Enjoy English School. We're on pages 36 and 37. Yesterday, we talked about the famous tattoos that Ainu women put on their face to help them kind of show they were mature and adults and ready to have children. But the government, actually, the Tokugawa shogunate, they said you can't have these tattoos anymore. In fact, they were banned in 1871. And when the Japanese were in Taiwan, they also banned indigenous people here from doing tattoos as well. But the Ainu indigenous people and the Taiwanese indigenous people did not get tattoos for the same reason. But the Japanese were like, we don't like it there, and so you can't do it here.
哦，我的天哪！所以你看一下哦，很有意思的事情是，我们昨天的时候才提到说，这个爱奴族的话，女性她们会纹身嘛，对不对？她们会纹在嘴巴这个地方纹上这个刺青。那事实上呢，在这个德川幕府的这个执政期间，他们有禁止爱奴人不能再做这样的刺青了。那事实上，那个当初在爱奴族的时候，是希望能够用这种方式去来表达说啊，这个女性成年的这样的一个概念。然后后来呢，这个日本到了台湾这边统治了台湾之后，也禁止原住民好去纹身刺青。虽然纹身刺青的这个背后的意涵是不一样的，但是因为以前他就说哦，我们都不允许爱奴族刺青了，所以我们在这边的话，你们也不准刺青，用这种方式来去约束当地的文化。
Let's continue to our paragraph. As Japanese became the dominant culture on Hokkaido, the Ainu language started to disappear.
好，再来我们看这一段的第一句话，他说 As Japanese became the dominant culture on Hokkaido， 一旦呢日本人他们日本的这个势力呢，好变成了北海道的这种主流的文化 ，the dominant culture 就是主流的文化之后 ，the Ainu language started to disappear。那相对来讲，当地的这个爱奴族的这种语言呢，就慢慢消失了。
Okay, we have two notes here. Number one, look at the word dominant. 请划到那个 D-O-M.Dom actually means to control. It means like king. And you know this because maybe you know the word kingdom. So 就是 K-I-N-G, king, 国王，后面加 D-O-M. Means like the place the king controls. So dom 有关控制的话. So they are the people in control here. Archie, we use the preposition on because Hokkaido is an island. So because Hokkaido is an island, we're going to say on Hokkaido.
没有错，所以这里的话注意两个，第一个就是 dominant 前面的 D-O-M 就是本身就是一个区域，像你听到 kingdom 就是国王统治的区域，就是它的王国嘛，所以 dominant 这个字的话就是他们所控制的 ，dominant 的话就是主流的。好，这是第一个。第二个 Hokkaido 它是一个很大的岛，所以在用岛的话，我们在使用的那个介系词选择就使用 on 这个字。
And it's not independent from the rest of Japan. So if we think about Hawaii is not independent from America, but we say in Hawaii because it is 它自己的 state, right? 它是它自己的州。So we do say in Hawaii, not on Hawaii.
Okay? 没有错。
But we will talk about on 这个岛 on in Hawaii when we're talking about in Hawaii. We'll say the on the big island.
没错。
Let's continue. Today, there are only around 100 native Ainu speakers left.
好，接下来告诉你说，时至今日呢 ，Today there are only around 100 native Ainu speakers left。好，就是只剩下差不多将近100名这种 native Ainu， 就是原生的原住民的这个爱奴族。好，剩下来这个 left 就是会说这个母语的人，大概只有100人左右。
Now, 不是 there's only 100 speakers left. 不是这样的意思。It means there are only 100 speakers that spoke Ainu language from the very earliest ages. Like it's mostly their mother tongue. That's very rare now, but there are other people that speak Ainu. It's kind of like how many people in Taiwan are native Taiwanese speakers? Like that's their main language first, not Chinese. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, there's lots of people that speak Taiwanese. That doesn't mean there's people that don't speak Taiwanese. That's not true.
没错。
So let's continue. It was only in 2019 that the Japanese government formally recognized the Ainu people as an indigenous group.
好，接下来呢，你看哦，他说到了什么2019年的时候 ，It was only in 2019 or 2019， 好，就是在2019年的时候怎么样 ？The Japanese government 日本政府呢 formally 正式的 recognize the Ainu people as as an indigenous group。这里的话特别注意一下 recognize as 这两个词帮我圈起来。If you recognize something as something， 意思就是把什么东西视为当做什么什么东西。所以在这边的话，他们是正式的，日本的政府正式的去把爱奴族视为一个正式的这个indigenous group， 就是原住民的这个团体，这样子原住民的一个族群。
This feels very formal, by the way. 很正式。So when we recognize A as B,I don't say I recognize Anthony as my friend because you are my friend, but it feels way too formal to say that. It's crazy.
你这样讲的话，让我觉得真的会很怪。
I officially recognize you as friend of Chris Gorski.
我好像被加冕了，对不对？
Official Chris Gorski
剑要放在我头上的。
You have like a flag.
没错。
This will provide them with legal protections for their culture.Language and traditions.
好，接下来告诉你说 ，This will provide them， 这样能够给予爱奴族什么呢 ？With legal protections， 能够在法律上的保护 ，for their culture, language and traditions。好，意思就是它能保护他们的文化，保护他们的语言，还有保护他们的传统。
Let's continue to our final sentence here. Hopefully, this culture can be saved for future generations.
好，他最后告诉你说 ，Hopefully。希望顺利的话呢 ，This culture can be saved for future generations。这样的文化能够未来子子孙孙呢，能够继续保存下来，他们也能够有机会亲至这样子的爱奴族的文化哦。
All right, hey Anthony, I want to make this official. I want everyone to know because I always tell Anthony I really appreciate him. I really like to work with Anthony here because I feel we just do a good job together. So I want to officially recognize him as my friend. Do we take a picture?
Yeah, 太棒了。
Okay, all right. Well, for enjoying, give this back to me. Have to pay for that.
Yeah.
For enjoying English School, I am Chris Gorski.
I'm Anthony.
We'll see you next month. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.